Elliot Malone was the best young athlete in Briarwood, a tight-knit community that prided itself on its people. A soccer genius with lightning speed and a natural ability to read the game, he had already caught the eye of several college scouts. At 17, his future was mapped out with unlimited potential, from college scholarships to the pros. His dedication was unshakable, and his conviction was as big as his dreams. And then came that cold October afternoon. After a long day at school, Elliot arrived home early, clutching his stomach in agony. Initially, he wrote it off as the stress of exams or about a minor tummy trouble. But as the day progressed, the pain grew stronger. His limbs were heavy and immobile, and his complexion began to pale, the whites of his eyes developing a definite yellow tint. It was his mother, Sarah, who first noticed. It was at first a small one, a small deviation in color, but the closer she peered at him, the quicker her heart thudded. Her son, the healthy, ruddy sportsman, was falling ill before her very eyes. She immediately called her husband, Marcus, and they decided to take him to the clinic. Both did not even expect that this regular checkup on the doctor would be the beginning of a nightmare. The clinic was also concerned, and after a series of tests, they decided to transport him to Briarwood Children's Hospital, which was 2 hours away. With each passing minute, Elliot's condition worsened, the pain intensifying and his strength waning. Sarah and Marcus did not utter a word as they drove in stunned silence, the seriousness of the situation hanging over them like a heavy mist. Their son was in trouble, grave trouble, and they had no idea what to expect. Upon reaching the hospital, the waiting game began. The physicians immediately began running a series of tests to see what was happening within Elliot's body. The hospital, large and accustomed to handling difficult cases, was filled with the sound of beeping equipment and running personnel. But all sounded distant to Sarah and Marcus as they sat paralyzed in the chilly waiting room. Hours passed, yet no definitive explanation was offered. When the physician did return, his expression was grave. Sarah's heart sank as he informed her that Elliot's liver was on the verge of collapse. The prognosis wasn't merely bad, it was terrifying. The doctor explained a rare and deadly virus that was ravaging Elliot's liver at a perilous pace. This virus was not something that could be shaken off by the body. Without a liver transplant, Elliot's chances of survival were slim. The word struck them like a blow to the gut, and Marcus's face turned pale. They were expecting something bad to happen, but this was worse than anything they had been preparing for. The doctor continued that Elliot would need to be added to the transplant list immediately, but there was no guarantee that a liver would be found on time. The transplant waiting list was long, and sick patients often did not survive the wait. Sarah stood and saw her whole world begin to unravel around her. How could this have happened to their good, healthy boy? Her questions ran wild with possibilities, but the reality burned clearly into view. Elliot's life was balanced precariously, and there was nothing she could do. Days passed, and Elliot deteriorated. He was thin, his skin a yellowish pallor, and he was becoming more dizzy by the minute. Sarah and Marcus were panicking, having no idea what to do. They sat beside him for hours on end, trying their best to comfort him as he was too ill to muster up a single word. The physicians had done all they could, but the prognosis was poor. It was clear that Elliot needed a transplant, and as soon as possible. But the possibility of getting a matching donor in a hurry seemed to be slim. And then, on a late night, just when Sarah was near giving up hope, they received a call that would make the situation reverse. The hospital had a potential living donor. The words living donor also appeared to hang precariously on everyone's lips, too amazing to entirely grasp. It had never occurred to Sarah and Marcus that someone could give up a section of their liver to save Elliot's life. The donor was a 27-year-old nurse named Jessie Hart. She had been a registered living donor some years previously. Sarah and Marcus were amazed. A stranger, someone they'd never known, was offering up their own liver to save her son. Jessie's reason was deeply personal. She'd seen the difference organ donation had made in her own life when her father had donated a kidney to his brother years earlier. That moment had changed her, and she'd been determined ever since to be able to do that same kind of thing for someone else. When she heard about Elliot's situation, she didn't hesitate. Her willingness to risk her own life to save a stranger was remarkable, But for Sarah and Marcus, it was like a miracle. It was not an easy choice to go through a liver donation. Jessie spent the following weeks having a series of tests to determine if physically she could donate part of her liver. The risks that were involved were not to be taken lightly. The outcome was far from certain. While the liver might regenerate, the procedure itself was dangerous. Jessie would be putting her own life on the line for a stranger. But as the test went on, Jessie never wavered once. She had a clear sense of purpose in the knowledge that she was giving someone a chance at life. Sarah and Marcus were grateful and terrified, though they could hardly imagine that there was such a selfless human being in the world. But simultaneously, they could not help but see the harsh realities of the risks taken. Their son's life was in jeopardy, yes, but Jessie's as well. The mere thought of someone offering so much for Elliot's survival made them humble and shiver with their spines. But Jessie refused to back down. "I didn't think twice about it," she explained later. "I knew I had to do it. This is my chance to make a real difference in someone's life." Sarah, fighting back tears, had a hold of him when she first called Jessie by phone. "Thank you." She barely got out, struggling to speak. "You're giving us back our son's life." Jessie replied with the same unbreakable compassion that led her here. "I just want to be able to help," she said to him. "You don't owe me one." And although the gratitude in Sarah's tone was impossible to overlook, Jessie's words cemented it. She didn't want to be thanked. She just wanted to save a life. And that is exactly what she was about to do. The transplant day had finally come, and there was tension everywhere. Sarah and Marcus barely nodded at each other as they walked down the hospital's antiseptic corridors. They could not even start to picture the seriousness of the experience ahead of them. Elliot was a white and thin figure from his prolonged illness, lying in wait for surgery. Jessie, equally prepared for it, was uncharacteristically calm, having done her stint as a nurse and witnessed her fair share of operations. The physicians were experts, but even they could not hide the risk of this procedure. It was not a common transplant. It was a life-and-death procedure for both Jessie and Elliot. The surgery would take several hours, and throughout that time, the surgeons would take out half of Jessie's liver and place it inside Elliot. The likelihood of complications was high, but the team trusted. Jessie's liver was a perfect match for Elliot, and as much as that was fortunate, it wasn't enough to eradicate the danger. For Sarah and Marcus, the minutes ticked away into hours as they waited in the operating room waiting area, able to do nothing but wait. Every time the door creaked open, their hearts would miss a beat, hoping for news, but dreading worse. Finally, after an eternity, the doctors emerged. They were tired, but they were smiling. Both the donor and recipient had made it through the surgery. There was no time for celebration, however. Elliot's recovery would be just as crucial as the surgery itself, and Jessie still had a long way to go. But for now, they had done it. The transplant was successful. The days following the transplant were difficult. Elliot remained in the intensive care unit, his body weakened by the surgery, but recovering. His eyes, once yellow and jaundiced, were beginning to return to their normal color. But healing would not be easy. His body was adjusting to the new liver, and there were some close calls during the first few days. In the meantime, Jessie healed on her own. The pain of the surgery was terrible, but her determination to help Elliot kept her spirits high. She had one way given a part of herself to save his life, and she was now fighting to heal so she could watch him live a long, full life. Sarah and Marcus took turns visiting Elliot every day, and they never missed stopping by and visiting Jessie as well. The two families, one united by birth, the other by adoption, became united in their healing process. Their relationship was growing stronger, forged by the experience and the incredible selflessness of Jessie. Elliot was becoming stronger by the day. The pain started to fade, and his energy levels began to return. His physicians were amazed at how fast he was recovering. Jessie's recovery was also uneventful. Her liver was beginning to heal, and while the pain was still acute, she knew she would be leading her life one day again. But for now, it only mattered that Elliot was alive, and it was due to her. By the time spring sprouted, Elliot's recovery was exceeding everyone's expectations. He was on his feet, regaining strength at a rate that seemed nothing short of miraculous. His yellow, sick skin had returned to normal, and he was more energetic than ever. It was as if life had come back into his body. He could finally return to his soccer training, although he lost a few months of career, and his passion for the game was stronger than ever. Jessie, too, was recovering, but at a more gradual pace. But when she would see Elliot out on the field once more, her heart was brimming with pride. She had saved his life, and now he was living it to its utmost capacity. Their bond, formed in the operating room, was something they couldn't define. They were family in the truest sense of the word, connected by something far deeper than blood. Elliot, determined as ever to make the most of his second chance at life, talked regularly about the importance of organ donation. He had seen firsthand the difference it makes to people, and committed himself to the goal that no one else should have to endure what he had to endure. And Jessie, who had spent her life caring for others, knew that she had a new sense of direction in knowing that she had made a true difference. The two, strangers previously, now had a solid connection, a connection that would last a lifetime. Months went by, and Elliot and Jessie were finally able to sit down and meet each other in person for the first time since the surgery. Their lives had progressed through text messages, phone calls, and visits. But now face to face, they could at last sit back and think of what both of them had endured. Jessie, still recovering from surgery herself, was amazed at how quickly Elliot had healed. To see him up and going, his eyes bright and full of energy, was a testament to the fact that she had made the right choice. When she saw him for the first time on the soccer field, following the transplant, her heart swelled with pride. "I never thought I'd meet you under these circumstances," Elliot said, his voice shaking. "You're sort of a miracle, you know." Jessie smiled sweetly. "I don't feel like a miracle. I just did what anyone would do for someone they care about." But Elliot shook his head, his expression serious. "Not anyone. You're incredible." Jessie's heart swelled with emotion, realizing just how much their lives had changed. What had started as an act of kindness had transformed into something far deeper, a lifelong bond between two people whose worlds had collided in the most unexpected way. With months rolling by, both Elliot and Jessie followed their individual journeys of healing. For Elliot, his journey back to his former self had been long and arduous, but every day brought some new triumph. He resumed his training with a newfound sense of determination, vowing to preserve the gift of life Jessie had given him. And day by day, Jessie's healing also showed improvement. She returned to the hospital, but with an even greater understanding of organ donation's impact. She had seen what it was like to save a life for herself, and that she would never forget. The two families remained close with one another, sharing milestones, joys, and struggles. The bond that they had established in the operating theater had only become stronger with time, and they considered each other as family. Organ donation, something that was abstract to them before, had become a reality for them. They had witnessed its capacity to save lives, and they were determined to propagate it to everyone that they knew. Elliot and Jessie's relationship became stronger with time. They cheered one another on to success and encouraged one another during tribulations. Jessie attended Elliot's soccer games, cheering him on the sidelines. Likewise, Elliot made sure that he attended to watch Jessie as much as he could, bringing her flowers or small trinkets as a gesture reminding her of how much he valued her. Their union was a true testament of the incredible bond attained through organ donation. To them, it wasn't just a medical operation. It was a tear-jerking, life-altering experience. They had both experienced loss, fear, and doubt, but they also had hope, love, and the incredible power of unselfishness. As they brought Elliot closer, his parents, Sarah and Marcus, came to accept Jessie as not a stranger, but as one of their own kin. They would often ask her over for dinner, and before long, she found herself celebrating holidays with them. It was as if their existence had been designed to intersect. And now that it had, they couldn't even begin to fathom a life without the other. They had all been changed forever, their lives forever bound together through the miracle of life Jessie had brought.